Hello, my name is Dr. Gabrielle Malcolm and I will be taking you through this first session of script writing for stage. This is your introductory section and I'm going to offer up some key points that I think are going to be very useful for you as you progress in your work in writing for the stage. And those will be, and they will be interconnected, but we'll define them as clearly as we can going forward. First of all, I want to ask the question, what is a script? Secondly, I want to introduce you to how you can create a scene on stage and realise an idea that will lead you towards good, robust storytelling and exciting action. And for that, we're going to be using our resource here that I want to introduce you to. And thirdly, just really emphasise how these issues are going to be very useful for you as you progress and as you take things forward in what you'll hopefully go on to do in your degree and in the creative industries for a job. So the first question I'm going to put to you is, what is a script? So there can be a range of answers for this, and mostly we think in terms of dialogue. We think of the words which are there for actors to learn and recite and perform, and of course the dialogue, the spoken language, is vitally important. What you have to remember though is that theatre is mostly a visual medium. So from the moment that the audience sits down in an auditorium or a community centre or a school hall, wherever you may be, they are absorbing things on a visual level first, and then perhaps, in comes the audible, they become auditors, they become audience, as well as being, as well as watching what they're seeing. So we've got to think in these kind of, multifunctional terms for this document that we have as a script. So you as a writer, you as the script writer, have to convey in the text, in the language that you give the performers, and in any stage directions and cast list, any descriptions for the scene, you've got to convey that so that other artists can interpret it and can realise, using the link to your imagination from your script, they can realise the work on stage. So that's about being able to speak to actors, directors, perhaps composers, perhaps, sound and lighting designers and scenic artists and designers, being able to speak to them through your document. So this shouldn't be intimidating, I hope. It should actually be very, very exciting, because the collaborative art form of theatre is something that once you take that on board, you embrace that, going forward, it's one of the most exciting things to be working in. So how do we think in terms of creating a scene for the stage? And kind of getting down to the sort of nuts and bolts of it. Because we've got to think about how we operate things in a physical, three-dimensional capacity on stage. We've always got to think about height, width and depth and time and location and the sort of, the sense and the atmosphere of what we're trying to develop. So for this, I like to use what I've got here, which is just a very general version of a set design model that is to scale, and so you can use resources that you might have. You can just cut out a cornflakes packet, cardboard box, and you can create a floor and scenery and pieces that you can manipulate on a 1 to 25 scale. So we've got 1 centimetre on the model is 25 centimetres in real life. So you can think about how you need to map out your floor, for example. We often think in theatre of building theatre from the ground up. So you kind of, what's the surface that we're actually going to be acting on, and how is it going to be functional for us? So I've got my centre line here, just, dividing my space, being aware of, the symmetry that I can work with. And I've also got at the front the setting line, which is the furthest downstage point for where my props, my furnishings, my scenery might go, where the lighting fill might be, so that beyond that setting line, we're kind of, going into sort of audience territory, possibly. And this isn't built to any particular venue or anything. I've just got this idea of, a three-dimensional world that I can play with. It's no coincidence that we call it a play. And I can see the possibilities that I might be able to introduce as a writer. So, for example, I have here my little standard actor, and I might think to myself, well, where do I want my entrances and exits to be? What will that deliver if I can think about how they actually come on stage? So I might think about, an upstage entrance for my actor. My character will come in, and that means that they have to travel. So that they have to travel to be able to get to the downstage area. What do? Do they begin speaking from the point that they enter? So are they heard before they're seen, or are they seen before they're heard? Or if they don't speak, he travels and he doesn't speak until he gets to that downstage point, and then he speaks. So what does that mean for his character? What does that mean for our story? You can also visualise for yourself how transitions can take place, because you might need the passage of time to go by, you might need your character to age, you might need them to have some kind of experience and move from one setting to another. So you can do this. You can create, for example, a little scene for one space, and then you can just use your flat scenery to create the opportunity for him to, turn a corner, for him to transition from one state to another, from one location to another. So that might express things in terms of your storytelling. That can save you an awful lot of business that you might have thought you had to arrange, or an awful lot of dialogue that you thought you might have to write. Because if you're having to write a play that's an hour and 15 minutes with no interval, that's very different from a 2.5 hour play with a 20-minute interval. So you might have to restrict things in terms of time. You might have to restrict things in terms of the scale of what you have and how many people you have in your cast. So if you think to yourself, if I have 3 performers, so I can have 2 characters on stage simultaneously at any one time and a third in the wings, that means that, I can kind of, rotate those characters, and, there are times I can bring them all on together, and other times where, I've got people having to make changes backstage, so they're having to transition, so I've got to have a solo person here. And for things like emphasis with the performers, if the venue that you're going to be set in and performing in is limited perhaps in terms of its technical resources, you might not have a full lighting rig, you might not be able to have a character who is there caught in the spotlight, for example. that's not always feasible in a lot of venues. So instead of that, you might want to be able, you need to be able to emphasise their position and their place. So in terms of the status that they're in, and you give them some, something in terms of the space that offers the sort of more of an emphatic distinction for that character in that particular time. And then you might want to use, levels. You might want to kind of, if a character is seated compared to a character being, standing. If a character is raised on a level, if a character is, down a staircase. So lots of things like that. If you use a physical 3-dimensional resource, and you can have fun with it, and B, you can experiment and you can grow, and it can offer up that added instrument for you in your writer's toolkit. It's it's something in which you can just explore, and then that means you can bring ideas then on the page and put them forward to directors and put them forward to actors. And it can only help, I think, in terms of your processes. The third point, which is related to that, is understanding stagecraft and understanding the aspect of theatre as this very much this living 3-dimensional art form which needs to achieve freshness and immediacy. Knowing those things and appreciating that, being able to express in your script that potential shows the other artists that you hopefully will work with how much you respect their discipline, how much you appreciate what they're putting into it. So it's about giving them a springboard from which to realise great potential for their creativity as well. It's not about being dictatorial or being absolute. And that's that multifunctional script. It's a guide. It's like a recipe book, and it means that other people can insert their own flourishes, because every time a play is performed, it's fresh. It's meant to be new. It's meant to be never before seen in that way. Even if you're on the 12th year of Cats or the 50th year of The Mousetrap. And what that shows other artists in the industry is that you're the type of person that, because you understand and appreciate that you can really flourish in that collaborative world. So if you get the opportunity to work directly with the company, that's very exciting. A lot of the time, your script may well be realised by people you never meet, but still it's informed by that idea of collaboration and being able to take things forward together and build, that's what helps build the reputation of plays and playwrights, the fact that people can be so flexible. And this brings me to that kind of, quite an emphatic, important thing that hopefully will inform you going forward for your professional life, is that that's what theatre in the UK really demands. It demands flexibility, because the restrictions on budgets, the restrictions on the sort of capacity in spaces, and goodness me, this applied even before the pandemic that we're living through at the moment. But these restrictions can also be opportunities. And we're looking to be able to be flexible, we're looking to be inventive, we're looking for the opportunity to have work realised possibly in a range of different spaces. So your work, if it can be, brought to a venue, say, just in the back of a transit van, a capsule performance on a small scale touring level with 3 performers and a stage manager. If you can write for that kind of demanding, those demands and those requirements, then you're going to be pretty versatile for all sorts of things going forward. So I hope that's useful information, and I think it works as a useful philosophy to always think of yourself as being part of a team, part of a collaborative group, and how you can get your work to fit with other people's visions as well as realise your own. Thank you very much.